Wow, I feel like it's been a minute since I've been behind my mic. Life has been crazy. I know some of you guys keep up with me on social media, and um, yeah, I was sick, which, like, it was the sickest I've ever been in my entire life. Like, I'm not even kidding you. I was down horrendous, like, terrible, terrible, terrible. And then obviously when I did Yaps Reese's story, that kind of blew up. So just the influx of messages and keeping up with people was a lot to unpack. And then when I got sick, my kids got sick. So it was just craziness. We're back on track now going forward. Episodes will be every Thursday, which I feel like they haven't been on a Thursday maybe like one time. I don't know. I try really hard to get them out on time, but the editing and it's a lot. So bear with me, guys. This is something new, and I still work full time, and I still have 3 kids, and I manage all of my own social media accounts, and my TikTok, my Yaps TikTok is a lot. So I appreciate you guys for your understanding and your continued love and support. It means the world to me. You guys don't even understand the messages that I get from you, encouraging me to keep going or just speaking on stuff that we relate. I love it. And that's what I'm here to do, is create a community, for people who have gone through things similar to me or are on a healing journey. I love that you guys come and talk to me about things that you're dealing with or things that we relate on. So never stop. It may take me a couple days to get to everybody for responding, but I will always try to respond. So bear with me. This is all new. Haven't done one in a while, so I figured I'd bring it back. I did get some good questions, especially with dropping Yaps Reese's story. There's some questions around that. But ultimately, this episode's pretty chill. I mean, there's not anything too crazy that happens. I feel like it doesn't ramp up until I get into my adult years. So, still unpacking how things affected me and growing up living in a situation where you don't really have the best examples. And just navigating through it as a child and as an adult is really the vibes for today's episode. I do want to say this. I got some really weird responses when I did Yaps Reese's story, and I want to address them, because if you know me, you know that's the kind of person that I am. I'm a address things head on type of person. So I want to clarify some things. Though my mom is dead wrong in her decisions, and though I have chosen to cut contact with her, I want to make it very clear that that's still my mother. Now, I'm not asking you guys not have an opinion on her, because I do as well. But I'm asking you guys to understand, right? Because there was a narrative swirling around that, Allegra let Emery watch her kids. I want to make things abundantly clear. No, I did not. You actually couldn't pay me to have that man watch my kids. Now, let me help you guys understand. When you're a child, and the only person that you had to look up to really is your mom. I mean, obviously I had extended family, but in my household, I have my mother and only my mother. I don't have my father. I went through a lot of different phases with her. Anger, sadness, feelings of betrayal, just all of it. And in those phases, when Emery was locked up, I kind of just accepted it, because it was like, whatever, she's on the phone with him, he's not physically here, so I could stomach it, if that makes sense. And then when he got out, my mom and I had a rocky a relationship that went up and down. And, when they weren't together, it'd be up, and when they were, it'd be down. I never have been okay with it. Even before I knew all the details, I was never okay with her still being with him. Ever. I want to make that clear. However, there did come a point in time where I was tired of fighting. I was tired of begging my mom to choose me. I was tired of having the hopes that she would leave him alone. I was tired of having these constant fights with my mom, these nasty fights with my mom. I was tired of it. So there was a point in time where, yes, I did try to accept it. I did. I have sat in the same room with him before, trying to appease my mother. And now, knowing how fucked up a situation was, and now understanding the truth and even her part of it, that makes me sick even more. Because it's like, how as a mother are you even going to expect me to sit in the room with my abuser to appease you? Because that's how desperate I was to have a relationship with my mom. Now, addressing that I let him watch my kids, simply not true. Every single time my mom and I got into a fight about Emery and their relationship was because of my children. Because I felt like she was putting my kids through the same thing she put me through. Because the standard was this: I don't want him around my kids. And her rebuttal would be, well, I'm not going to tell him he can't come here, so I guess by default, I can't see them. So yeah, that infuriated me. Like, you're not going to do to my kids what you did to me. So for me personally, I'd rather my kids just not be around, because the standard is I don't want him around my kids. You're refusing to set that boundary. You're refusing to abide by those rules. There was times where she would have him around and I didn't know about it. There was specifically a time that I found out he was over there and my son was over there, and I went and picked him up. Like, you're not sleeping over here, sorry. And my son was very upset about it, and that's my point, to see him upset because I have to come pick him up because I don't want this man around my kids, was just an eye-opener that, it doesn't matter who you are, she's choosing him. It could be her kids, it could be her grandkids, she's choosing him. So the narrative that I was ever okay with it, or that I ever allowed him to watch my kids, is simply untrue. Was there a point in time where I did try to accept the situation because I was desperate to have a mom? Of course. But I also feel like, why do you feel like you have the right to have an opinion on that? Because, and this is going to be controversial, and this is a hot take, because quite frankly, I feel like I shouldn't even have to explain that. So it does irritate me. And in the midst of being irritated, this is a hot take. Y'all will give chance after chance after chance after chance to a man, and accept and accept and accept and accept from a man, but then want to come at me about how I choose to handle my mother, or how I've been around her or given her chance. That's my mom. like that's my mother. So we're all human beings at the end of the day. How things stand right now is I don't want a relationship with her. I think that I've talked about it a million times, and I'm going to talk about it in this episode. I feel like she's pathetic. I feel like I'm sad for her because she's weak. And, I think that it takes a lot of mental and emotional damage to look at your children and your grandchildren and choose a toxic relationship over them. So that's where I stand. But I wanted to make all that very clear. And I want to make something else very clear. A lot of you guys haven't walked in my shoes. So you can't have an opinion about, oh, she's done this, she did that. But at the end of the day, given my circumstances and given the examples that I've had, I am damn proud of myself. And unless you've walked in my shoes, unless you've had to see what I've had to see and endure what I've had to endure, I don't think that you have the right to have an opinion. You might think you do, but you don't. So I just wanted to lay that all out, because I think that it's weird that I even have to explain that, right? Because what I'm doing is I'm outing a murderer. So, like, to come back at me, you, is crazy work. Like, I just feel like far too often a victim will come out about their abuser, and it's like, babe, there's no they in this equation. Like, it's like there's nothing that you could point out about me that negates the facts. Like, there's nothing that you can point out about me that like change the fact that man's a murderer and a child abuser and SA'd a child. Like, there's no worlds where like that is untrue. No matter how many fingers you guys want to point at me, the facts are the facts. So I think that it's really weird when, a victim comes out and is speaking their truth, and we want to analyze, well, what did they do? What did they do wrong? Or how did they cause it? Listen, that's what's wrong with society today, is that we don't want to accept that people are fucked up and they are who they are. So we want to point the finger to somehow make this seem less terrible than it is. And the reality of it is if that is the takeaway that you have chosen to come to in watching my content, I mean, I can recommend my therapist. So that's all I want to say around it. I just yapped for, I don't even have my watch on. I just yapped for a little minute in this intro, but it's been weighing heavy on my mind, and I just wanted to address those things. So let's get into episode 7. My whole life people have told me, Allegra, you're wise beyond your years. For some, that's a compliment. For me, it's a reminder that I had to be. That life forced me to grow up even before I had the chance to be a child. And I know some of you are already rolling your eyes. Boo-hoo, here she goes again with another sad story. Some of y'all have lost the plot. The lore, if you will. So let me remind you, this is my life. My trials, my tribulations. Most vulnerable moments bled onto these pages. I've cried writing them. I poured every ounce of myself into them. And whether you're here because you love my content, or because you like me, because you support me, or because you're nosy, no shade, I am too, or because you straight up don't like me and you need material for the group chat, it doesn't matter. I'll be here 52. Nothing better to do than judging a 27-year-old just trying to make sense of the life she was given. And if that's you, damn. I hope you're at least able to say you've made all the right choices in life, and that's why you feel qualified to judge me. But no matter why you're listening, I just hope you actually hear me. Life will beat you down over and over and over again. You can be raised in chaos, molded by trauma, betrayed at every turn, and still rise from the ashes like a damn phoenix. You can still decide who you become. You are accountable to that. Not your past, not your pain. You. Yes, my story is sad, but don't get it twisted. There are lessons in this. If you're one of the lucky ones, someone who had parents that chose you, loved you, protected you, let my words remind you to be grateful. Go hug your mother. Call your father. Hell, thank them for giving you something that so many of us never had. And if you relate to what I talk about, if you felt the kind of pain that I have, I want you to know that you're not alone. I see you. And I know that healing isn't linear. I know that some days you wake up and you're still carrying away to everything that happened to you. I know that some days anger is all you have left. Because let me tell you, anger was all I had as a teenager living with my mother. I learned long before I should have that just because someone is your parent does not mean they'll protect you. And that changed everything. There's something infuriating about knowing your parent is dead wrong, but being the child, powerless to hold them accountable. When their moral compass is completely skewed, yet you're still expected to follow their rules, listen to their advice, and shape your life around their experiences and expectations. It's confusing. It's maddening. I remember being a teenager, harboring all this rage, especially towards my mom. How could I not? I grew up in a house where respect was always a conversation, always a demand. And I remember thinking over and over, how can I respect someone who doesn't even respect themselves? That thought never left me. It's echoed in my head for years, whispering back to me every time I find myself tolerating bullshit. It's a reality check, a warning, a painful truth. When you apply that to a mother-daughter relationship, the weight of it is suffocating. Because a mother is supposed to lead by example, to be the first person who teaches you what self-worth looks like. But what happens when your mother shows you the opposite? Looking back now, as an adult, I see how damaging it really was. I didn't just grow up in a toxic home. I watched a toxic relationship unfold in front of me. I watched my mother love a man who was destroying her, destroying us. I watched her compromise herself, make excuses, choose him over and over even when it was breaking everything around her. And I had to sit there, helpless. A front row seat to my own mother's self-destruction. And that shaped me in ways I'm still untangling. As a kid, you're supposed to be the center of your parents' world, their priority, their reason for everything. We weren't. Emery was. Even from behind bars, that man controlled our entire households. From a jail cell. My mother's money, her time, what we could and couldn't do, like a puppet master pulling her strings. And yes, I said money. She worked full-time, but when all was said and done, he decided what she did with it. Imagine clocking in, putting in the hours, exhausting yourself, only to have a man in prison dictate where every dime goes. This whole dynamic runs deeper than a lot of you even understand. I remember one singular time, I asked her for just one day. We were at Cedar Point. I begged her, please just today, just us, don't answer if he calls. I just want a day where I came first. For a moment, it felt possible. For a moment, we were just mother and daughter, laughing, riding roller coasters, eating junk food. I almost let myself believe that I could have a version of her. Then her phone rang. And she answered. I remember feeling that moment in my body, that sinking, hollow feeling. The instant realization that even when he wasn't physically here, he was still here. I went quiet. I shut down. I stared off into the crowd, pretending I wasn't listening to her, whispering into the phone, pleading, excusing, giving herself away to him. And I learned a lesson that day. I would never come first. It wasn't just watching him be an abuser in all of his glory. It wasn't just what happened to Reese, though that alone was enough to shatter me. It was this insidious grip he had on her. This twisted loyalty she had to a man that tore our family apart. Emery never truly went away, even from behind bars. Even in the moments they weren't together, he never left. He was a constant, looming presence, making the relationship the only example of love I had to look up to. When they did break up, when he was gone, what was left? A mother who didn't know how to exist without him. She was a shell of herself, waiting, always waiting for him to come back, because he always did. And I had to watch it, again and again. The countless nights I heard her cry, over him. Do you know the kind of confusion that creates in a teenager? To hear the woman who is supposed to protect you mourning the man who destroyed everything. And now, as an adult, I can look back and see it. I can connect the dots between the things I witnessed and the way that I move through life now. The way that I love, the way I trust, the way I react to control, to power, to men who think they have the right to decide my worth. The impact is extreme, and I'm about to unpack it all, right here, right now. My mom confided in me a lot when I was a teenager, and I mean a lot. I was her only biological child, not with Emery, so every time they fought, every time she needed to vent, I was the one she ran to. Whenever she spent an extra $20 on me, or let me do something she knew he wouldn't like, I was forced to carry the burden of, don't tell your brother, who at the time was my best friend. That alone created its own toxic dynamic between us, but that's a whole other story. Even though I was angry with her, so angry, I still long for a normal relationship with her. I still do. A girl's relationship with her mother is supposed to be special. A mother is supposed to be your safe place, your example, your first protector. Mom and I had moments where she was just that, my best friend. But then inevitably he would come first, and everything would shift. I had to unpack a lot to get here, to see things for what they really were. To understand that no matter how close we got, no matter how many times I picked her up after he destroyed her, no matter how much I begged her to see him for what he was, she would always choose him. I remember one moment so vividly, like I'm still sitting there. We were in the car. I can't remember where we were going, but I was in the passenger seat and he called. I could feel my body tense immediately. It always irritated me. And the way she dropped everything for that call. My stomach knotted. My face got hot. And I just went silent, rolling my eyes, retreating into myself. I'd seen this play out a million times. But this time, something was different. She sounded upset. Pleading. Her voice shook as she said, "Please, I'm sorry." It was quick, too quick. Usually, she stayed on until the time was up, clinging to every second. But this time, the call ended abruptly. She put the phone down and started crying. I stared at her blankly, my brain scrambling to process what was happening. Finally, I asked, "What's going on?" Through tears, she choked out, "He broke up with me." Internally, I was cheering. But then I saw how broken she looked. Still confused, I asked, "Why?" Her voice was small, fragile, like a little girl caught doing something wrong. "Because I lied, Allegra." I remember blinking, my brain glitching, trying to compute this. Lied? Lied about what? After everything he's done to her, to us, lying is where he draws the line? She stayed after he traumatized all of her kids, hit her, cheated on her, but now he's leaving her because she lied? I bought in. I needed to know. Lied about what? She sniffled, voice cracking. About money, Allegra. He was budgeting for us, and I overspent. I lied about it, and he broke up with me. Let's break this down together, shall we? I was 14. Frontal lobe not even fully developed. Sitting in a car, trying to wrap my head around what the actual fuck was happening. My mother, the woman who birthed me, raised me, was supposed to protect me, was crying because a man who she should have left alone a long time ago, a man who was a proven piece of literal shit, a man sitting in a prison cell for murdering her child, had broken up with her over money. Money that she earned, while he sat in a cage for taking her child's life. Got it. Now, let's talk about what that does to a young girl. I remember feeling confused. I remember feeling angry. Angry at her for tolerating it, but just as angry at him for still having the power over her. I remember feeling conflicted. Blaming her for staying, but blaming him for being a monster. I remember looking at her, begging in my mind for this to be the moment, for her to finally see it, to wake up. But she didn't. And watching that dynamic my entire life into adulthood left scars I didn't even realize were there. Even though I consciously knew that it was wrong, subconsciously it planted seeds. Seeds that took root. Because when a young girl watches her mother, her first example of love and worth, be treated like nothing and accept it, that becomes the blueprint. It seeps into her bones whether she realizes it or not. She learns that love means suffering, that devotion means sacrifice, that being chosen is conditional. She learns how to mirror. And sometimes she doesn't even realize it until she's in it. That, combined with the desperate need to be loved that I've always carried, created the perfect storm to become just like her. And guess what? I did. I've lived through time periods where I was her. Looking in the mirror, bruised up, battered, and seeing nothing but her. Because when you grow up having to beg your own mother to prioritize you, when you watch her accept and accept, beg and beg for someone to do right by her, and then you have to turn around and beg her to do right by you, it makes you vulnerable to the fakest kind of love. The first person who made me feel safe, even if it was a lie, could have access to me in a heartbeat. The first person to pretend like I was the center of their world even when I wasn't, had me clinging to them for dear life, soaking up whatever love I could, however I could get it. Dangerous. Clouding my judgment to the toxicity that lay beneath the surface, here's a hard truth. I was in my first abusive relationship at 16. It didn't last long, and it wasn't significant enough to unpack deeply, but just sit with that for a second. 16. At 16 years old, I had a 19-year-old putting his hands on me, cheating on me, breaking me down. 16 and already continuing the cycle. 16 and already believing that that was the kind of love that I deserved. That it was normal. And my mom, she didn't know. How could she? Her days were consumed with work because after her charges, she could only get low-paying jobs, meaning she was always working. Most of the time, she was gone, leaving the house and my brothers to me. And when she was home, she was either in her room on the phone with Emery or asleep, and I was alone. Navigating the world without guidance, without protection, without anyone to tell me this isn't love. Because I had never seen what love was supposed to look like. To me, it made sense. He had grown up in a messed up situation too. His parents didn't do right by him. I understood him. And in my mind, if I could just love him the way he had never been loved, if I could just show him what love was supposed to feel like, he would do right by me. Right? Wrong. That wasn't love. That was a trauma bond. But at the time, I didn't know that. I was just doing what I had always been taught to do. Tolerate, fix, nurture, take care, try to make sense of it. That had been my role in every part of my life. Helping my grandma, helping my mom, holding shit together, taking on burdens that were not supposed to be mine. And the thing about that, it bleeds into your relationships. It's called big sister syndrome. Something I still to this day have to unpack in therapy. I kept myself doing it with old friends, with family and relationships, always trying to be the person who helps, who fixes, who saves. But growth is realizing you have to let people be who they are. Not who they could be, not who they might become one day, not who they are in their best moments, who they are right now. And based on that and that alone, you decide. Is this someone I want to give my time and energy to? Is this a relationship that's worth keeping? Because you cannot fix the broken. You cannot heal people you didn't hurt. Hell, you can't even heal people you did hurt. Healing is a personal journey. One that the boy that I was with at 16, he probably never went on. Even after experiencing someone like me. Someone who gave him every reason to want to change. But that's the thing. You can give somebody every reason to want to change, but if they don't want it for themselves, they won't. And that goes for any relationship, clearly. I wish I could say that was the only time that I fell into that pattern, but it wasn't. I've hit scary, scary lows. And this is where I say everything happens for a reason. Because if it wasn't for my deep, unwavering devotion to be nothing like my mother, I believe I'd still be in it. But per usual, we'll unpack that next time. Okay, so we've got some questions. First and foremost, this episode low-key ate. No, I don't think you guys understand that, when I read this back after I've written it to you guys, I'm so proud of myself. Because it's this is all things that I couldn't even begin to articulate, even a year ago about myself. And, it's crazy the things that you can accomplish when you're in tune with the person that you are and why you're the person that you are. I was just watching this video of Glorilla, and she was saying, yeah, before I blew up, like, I went on a 60-day cleanse, and my mind had just never been clearer at that point in time. And right at the end of that 60-day cleanse, I blew up. And I believe that when you are pouring your energy into you, and obviously I have kids, so I pour my energy into my kids, but when I'm focused on me, I can accomplish anything, and I mean that. And anyone who knows me will tell you the same thing about me. Like, if I put my mind to something, I make it happen. I'm really a force to be reckoned with, and that's not me tooting my own horn, it's facts. And I think that when you become in tune with who you are, wait till you see what life brings to you. Wait till you see how life reciprocates to you. Hearing from all of you guys and being there for all of you guys through your own trials and tribulations, like those of you who hit me up and, talk about it and stuff. I'm doing this for a reason. Like, I want to help people get to where I have in my healing journey and explain how. Like, I have not always been this way. A lot of y'all probably know me as a train wreck, and at one point in my life I was. Like, I haven't always been this emotionally mature person, and like I haven't always been as in tune with myself. To be honest, I've made a relationship the center of my world since I was 15 years old. Like, not all of them were toxic, some of them were, but even just centering a man like in my life, I feel like has held me back, because I'm watching the things that I'm accomplishing, pouring into myself and staying true to my purpose and staying true to my goals. And I feel it. Like, I feel it. Like, it's just game changing. So I encourage all of you guys to really do some work on yourself. Like, really work every day to be better and learn about yourself and the world. And I promise you, you'll be like, wow, because that's how I feel. Okay, but getting into some of these questions. So the first one is, how do you combat thinking you're to blame for your abuser's actions? And I mean, to be honest, it's simple. You're not to blame for somebody else being unable to regulate their emotions. And I've touched on this before on the pod, where it's like, there's quite literally not a single thing that a woman can do that is grounds for a man to put their hands on you. Like, the same way society tells the woman you should leave, society should tell the man, like, you should be leaving before it even gets there. Like, if I am angering you to the point of where you want to raise your hand to me, the man needs to know how to walk away. Like, and, couples fight and sometimes stuff does get to a level of being disrespectful. But what it really boils down to is this. Where is the emotional intelligence level? Like, you could never get me in a situation with a man again where I even have to raise my voice, because it's just not healthy communication. Like, if we cannot sit here and have a conversation at a level tone, hey, I don't like that you did XYZ, and the man can't look at me and be like, okay, my relationship with you is more important than whatever, and that goes both ways, right? Like, if my man comes to me and says, hey, I don't like XYZ, I mean, as long as it's rational, I should, as his partner, be able to be like, okay, like, my bad, going forward, I won't do that if it makes you uncomfortable. And that's what it really boils down to, is like, there's no acceptable situation where I'm screaming at him or he's screaming at me, and there's certainly not an acceptable situation where it's getting physical. So it doesn't matter. You could have been screaming in that man's face. Him putting his hands on you, not warranted. It's not warranted. And I think that you just have to remind yourself of that. Like, look, he lacks the emotional intelligence and the emotional maturity to diffuse a situation. Because let's say in an instance, I'm at fault, right? I started to fight, I'm at fault, and it results in somebody putting their hands on me. Even though I started the fight, there's no world where that's warranted. There's not. And the only thing that I can say that you're at fault for is being in it. Like, and you're not even at fault for that. Like, we all have reached a point in our life. I guess I can't say all, but like, we've all been in a relationship that we probably shouldn't have been in. Whether it was because we were in a bad state of mind, or they caught us at the right time, or sometimes you get bamboozled. They're like the best man ever, and next thing you know, they're psychotic. Like, the only way that I'd ever say that, the victim is at fault is, the only thing you're at fault for is being in it for as long as you were. They're not even going to, and I don't like the verbiage at fault, because it's not your fault. Like, I don't know. And I think that it just comes down to like mental strength and just reminding yourself, like, in the real world, like in real adult relationships, somebody putting their hands on you is not behavior that's acceptable in any capacity. So if somebody is doing that to you, you're not to blame. You could have even started the craziest fight of all time. You could have even said the most disrespectful stuff out of your mouth. It doesn't give a man the right to put his hands on you. Ever. So you just have to remind yourself of that. Like, it's not your fault that person is so damaged that is how they choose to handle their emotions. Like, that's not your fault. That's theirs. And a lot of the times I feel like women get into these situations because, like I just talked about in the episode, it's empathy, right? Like, I've been through, a lot of it for me came from, I've been through some shit. So when I meet a man that's been through some shit too, and he gets to act in a certain way, I try to dumb it down to, well, Allegra, when you weren't fully healed, you were doing X, Y, Z, or like, Allegra, like, some people just aren't as emotionally mature as you. And it's like, no. Like, it doesn't matter what you've been through, what you've seen, what you dealt with. There's no reason for you to be in a relationship with somebody treating them like shit because you've been through stuff in your life. And I think that far too often women do that. Like, we want to fix these men, or because we're understanding, we tolerate it, or because we want to show them love. I mean, how do you look at a man that, has an estranged relationship with their family, and you feel like they haven't been shown love, and that's all you want to do is show them, like, look, you have somebody in your corner that cares about you and loves you, but they're not in a space to receive it. Like, it's not your job. And for me to even be on here right now and saying this to y'all, like, is growth. Like, those of you that know me know that I'm like the benefit of the doubt queen in my relationships. Well, he blah blah. Like, no, he nothing. If he wanted to, he would. If he wanted to be a good partner, he would. If he wanted to articulate his emotions in a mature way, he would. If he wanted to get to the bottom of the trauma that's causing him to act that way, he would. Like, just like me. For me personally, it was never like a fun time being in a dark place. Like, how there are people who just choose to like let it fester is beyond me. But now that I've gone on a tangent, the answer to the question is you just have to continue to remind yourself that. And I urge you to go to therapy. For me, therapy has been tremendous. It's really good to have an unbiased party tell you about yourself and hold you accountable to the way that you think and your actions. So keep reminding yourself and get a therapist is what I would say. The next question is, how is your mom with all of this, and has she reached out? I don't know how she is. We have not spoken. She has not reached out. The last time I talked to her about the autopsy report because I had read it for the first time, and I basically told her, like, after reading this, I literally can never look at you the same way again. And I urged her to go to therapy because I feel like there's no way in hell where anyone who's mentally sound would choose to be with somebody who did what he did. And this is where I get sad, right? Because I talk to my mom and she's literally brainwashed. Like, you could read her the facts of the matter and she will say that didn't happen. Like, you could literally read her the facts and she would say, no, that wasn't what happened. Like, I literally told her, I said, Mom, I used to be scared, like, to come home. You weren't scared. You loved him. I said, girl, like, I was being nice. I didn't want to get my ass whooped. Like, how are you going to sit here and tell me I wasn't scared? Like, she's so far gone of, like, thinking clearly that it's, like, alarming. And it makes me sad because to an extent she is a victim. Like, she has been manipulated to believe the lies at this point. Like, the lie has been the story for so long that she believes it. So in her head, she probably really does love that man. Like, in her head, it was an accident. In her head, you know, he's changed. In her head, it was just this tragic situation, and you know, they love each other. That's really how she sees it. Like, really, like, that's really how she sees it. Like, I've talked to her several times about it, and like, I just be like jaw on the floor from her responses because, like, she's not even seeing it from clear eyes. Like, you can't see it from clear eyes when you're in it. And like I said, you could literally show her the facts, like, blatantly. And she's like, no. Like, I asked her about the sexual assault. I was like, it clearly states in here that he was sexually assaulted. And the story that I've always been told is like, yeah, they found tiny tears from him going to the bathroom. But then, like, obviously now there's ways to research things. So I did. I looked into it. Listen, if ChatGPT ever has a data breach, like, my ass is grass. I use ChatGPT for everything. And I literally asked Chat, like, are these injuries is it possible for using the bathroom to be the reason for these injuries? And even Chat was like, there is no scientific way that these injuries would have been caused by something exiting, only something entering. And based on, I'm not going to go into the details because, like, I can't even stomach it, and you guys probably can't either, but, like, the moral of the story is, like, it blatantly says, like, that's scientifically impossible. But in her head, that's what happened. Like, literally, like, there's no giving her the facts of the matter. Like, she is in a whole other, like, world. Like, it's crazy because I feel like I'm more informed about what happened, but she lived through it as an adult. Like, but when you lie to yourself for so long, and when you're being lied to for so long, like, you really start believing it, and that's what it boils down to. And she also told me, like, my therapist said that it was good that I forgave. And, of course, that's what your therapist is going to say when they don't know the details, because you yourself don't even believe the details. Like, I bet you if you handed your therapist the autopsy report and said, hey, read this, and then I'm going to tell you that I'm still with this guy, they're going to probably say you're twisted. But of course, when you go in and you give the minimized version of events, and, oh, he accidentally blah, 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 and I forgave him and we stayed together, of course that looks like, oh, wow, you're so healed and you're so good at forgiving. But when you give somebody the reality of the situation, there's nobody on the earth that thinks that's normal. So all of this to say, no, we don't talk. I urged her to go to therapy. I said, you know, I would love to see how your mind changes if you remove yourself from the relationship and go to therapy. And yeah, I mean, I basically told her, like, you need to get some help. That was the last time we spoke. I don't plan to speak to her. I don't think she plans to speak to me, especially not now. So it just kind of is what it is. Like, to be honest, I never felt more at peace in my entire life. Like, yes, I've lost people that I love, but once again, it's about learning what love is, and having to beg somebody to see your worth, especially your parent, where, like, you should never have to beg them to see your worth, and and having to be responsible for everyone else's like emotional mishaps, like cutting that out of my life has been tremendous. Like I sleep amazing. Like, and I sleep amazing too, knowing that my kids are not gonna be like, no, like, just no, like, I'm sad because my kids were close with my mother, but it all boils down to choices. And my kids are not gonna watch the same toxic relationship that I did. My kids are not gonna have the same impacts that I'm reading to you guys on these pages. My kids aren't gonna have. And, you know, she was in their life a lot. And she would have had some sort of impact. Yes, of course, I'm their mother. So, you know, I can interject and I could, you know, try to, like, put them on the right path after seeing certain shit or hearing certain shit. But I'd rather them just not see it or hear it. Like, why even do that? So, for me, it just is what it is. Another question I got is like, what is my goal? So I have a few. Number one, like, so I think the goal is shifted because I think people like fail to understand that a lot of things I'm finding out in real time. Like, I didn't know that it was as bad as it was until I read the autopsy report. I didn't know that my mom didn't get in the ambulance with her child after it happened and stayed back with Emery. Like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that, like, there's just a lot that I didn't know. Like, so when I first started this, it was like, okay, I'm on a healing journey. I've been through some shit that people probably, like, would be interested in. Some might be able to relate, some might not, but people can relate to me being on a healing journey because everyone's gone through their own shit. So that was the goal initially. Like, I want to write a book and I want to create a community of people who are also healing, who have also endured certain stuff, or people who, you know, are just interested in me and my story. And that was the goal. And I'm still going to do that. At the end of this, when I finish, like, the book, I'm going to publish it and I think turn it into, like, maybe a help book, because obviously you guys have already heard the story, but I'm still going to be doing that. But in finding out certain information, I've added some other goals as well. And one of which being getting justice for my brother. Like, I look into the situation and I just get pissed. Like, his own mother didn't intervene. Literally. CPS was called more than once. Like, I've now spoken to even an old babysitter who said even she reported things. They didn't do anything. Okay, and how often does that happen? Like, how often does CPS fail children? Then, like, the plea deal is bullshit. Like, it's bullshit. And then, like, the fact that he's out, bullshit. Like, and then I hear about his little bullshit story. He tells people, like, oh, I was giving him a bath and he drowned despite the fact there was 0 water in his lungs. Like, you're a fucking liar. And the fact that he's been able to be out and lying this whole time really fucking pisses me the fuck off. So I want justice, whether that means I file with the DOJ and have them investigate and see if they can't reopen the case and lock him the fuck back up. Or if that means that I do a documentary and the entire world knows what he did and who he is. Because there's no way that I'm ever going to be okay with him being free. Like, the autopsy speaks for itself. You're a sicko. So I'm finding out more and more, and I want to advocate for these things. Like, the justice system is so messed up. And even with that little girl, McKenna Ray out of Lake County, I don't know, so I know some of you guys are listening from all over the world, but there's a little girl in Lake County named McKenna Ray, and her parents very obviously did something to her. Like, she was hospitalized at 7 months old fighting for her life with, like, gruesome, fucked up injuries. And Lake County prosecutors, the same prosecutors that did this bullshit with my brother, have yet to make an arrest. I'm confused by that. How can a little girl have broken ribs, is blind from how bad she was beaten, like brain damage, like the list goes. I don't want to like say the wrong stuff, so I can't name every single injury, but understand this was like a brutal, like she was being beaten over the course of months, like by whoever was caring for her. And because she was in a household with 5 adults and they're all playing the we don't know what happened game and pointing fingers, the prosecutors have not made a arrest. But how can a mother get to say, I don't know how these things happen to my kid? It doesn't make sense. At the very least, arrest her for child endangerment. I don't get it. When my son came home today with a bump on his head. First thing I said, what happened to you? Like, one scratch. What happened to you? How, as a mom, is your 7-month-old got broken bones and fighting for her life because of the injuries, and you don't know how it happened? How is that not a fucking automatic charge? How? So to get to the point, this shit happens every day. So if my voice can make even this much of a difference, that is the goal. That is the goal. So to give you insight on that, that's my hopes. I would love to be able to advocate for these things full time. I can't right now because I have to work. I have to provide for my family. But I have some stuff in the works, and we'll see. We'll see where it goes. We'll see what happens. And yeah, that's kind of the gist of like the purpose. I mean, also too, it's a journey for me. Like, what people don't understand is I lived my whole life not being able to open up to people or be vulnerable. So getting behind this mic and pouring my literal heart and soul out to y'all publicly is growth. Like, serious growth. Like, so I'm on a journey myself. There's a lot of hopes that I have to come out of this and a lot of wants. Ultimately, my brother deserved better. So if I could use his story to make a positive impact on the world, or a positive impact on you guys that are watching, that's a win. So I'm not going to answer some other questions this week just because I feel like this has already been kind of long, so I'll save them for next week. But thank you guys, as always, for watching. I love you guys, and we're back to every Thursday. I'll be dropping an episode. So, yeah, love y'all.